Hi, everybody, and welcome to Bugcrowd's weekly webinar. This week we're joined with Barracuda. We're going to talk about their build versus buy decision they went through a handful of months ago. We're joined with Matt Trimble, Sith Lord and Manager of Product Security, and Dave Faro, the Senior Director of the Product Security team. So as you can see, we're going to cover building of the Barracuda Bug Bounty program originally back in 2010. We're going to get through their weighing of options as their program grew and expanded, their transition over to Bugcrowd, some lessons that they've learned through the years of running a bug bounty program, both on their own and with us, and what the future holds for the bug bounty program at Barracuda.
So first off, as you can see, grab a quick screenshot of the old Barracuda program, talking about launching their bounty program. So Matt and Dave, I guess we'll start with you, Dave. Barracuda was one of the pioneers of the bug bounty craze back in the day. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the bug bounty program itself in the first place?
Yeah, so I wasn't there. I was at the company at the beginning, but I wasn't involved in the beginning. Prior to my involvement, we were engaged with security researchers on a pretty regular basis, and they would. We had a security mailing list. People would mail in, and we would address their concerns and correspond with them. And sometime back in 2010, our research arm, Barracuda Labs, noticed that bug bounty programs were becoming a thing, and thought, we're a security company, we should jump on that bandwagon. We're already interfacing with researchers, so it would be a good idea to expand that interaction with them. And so we launched the program in 2010, really sort of on a shoestring. We didn't put together a program or a team in place to deal with those things. We just said we're gonna take that input coming in from the program and absorb that in the engineering program, or the engineering teams.
Great. That sounds like probably a pretty typical place a lot of our customers nowadays are at least in the beginning. So can you walk us through any of the concerns you had going into it and how you addressed those concerns?
Yeah, there were two main concerns that I remember hearing about when we were setting the program up. The first one was that we were inviting researchers to attack the systems that we use to do business. That was probably the biggest worry that we had. There was that worry, and then there was the worry that we were writing an open checkbook for anybody that wanted to just hit us up for money. Mm-hmm. And so we addressed that in two ways. One way was we set the scope of our program to be just our client's form factor, and that was specifically designed to disincent people from hitting the demo boxes that we have online, which are sort of the core of our sales process. It also disincented them from hitting our corporate websites and the new web-based services that we were just starting to launch at that time. The second thing that we did was we put a scope around the types of things that we would pay for. I mean, anybody who's gotten into the bounty program business has had to deal with their share of reports of clickjacking. And so that really, the way we dealt with that worry was by scoping what we were willing to pay for.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That's a pretty solid answer, and I think a lot of people getting into the program phases right now, that's very helpful for them. So do you have a gauge on how much effort, once the program was up and running, you and your team were putting into it?
Yeah, so it evolved over time. So I was looking back through my records this morning in preparation for this, and I got involved with the program in the winter of the very beginning of 2012.
Okay.
And at that time, my interest in it was I was actually trying to free up some time from the guy who had been dealing with the research community, so that he could focus on some architectural issues that we were wanting to do or to solve. And I looked at that, and I said, yeah, I can handle paying the bounty payments for you. There aren't that many of them coming in. And as I took those on, I So I would get, one or two emails, maybe three emails a month. So at that time, that's all that was coming in, even at the beginning of 2012. And so I looked at it and thought, yeah, I can absorb that. So I started corresponding with the researchers. And over the next 9 months or so, 9 or 10 months, that trickle of 1 to 2 or 3 a month ramped up to 4 or 5 a week. And I found myself running behind and keeping up with these guys. Not just running behind and responding to them and following up and letting them know where we were with remediating things, but we built our products on a common platform for the most part. And so many of these things that were reported needed to be fixed across the product line. And so there's a downstream management problem with our engineering team. So I set about modeling the work that needed to be done in Jira. And so when things really changed, I remember was the last part of October. And I was trying to clear out my inbox of things that were coming in. At that time, I was really the only person actually dealing with the bounty program. And I had set up Jira so that we could track everything that we wanted to track. And I was feeling really great, and I was feeling benevolent. And I rewarded an award on an out-of-scope report that was a good quality report that I thought really warranted a bounty. But it was out of scope. And I awarded the guys some cash. And within 20 minutes, we were under a full-scale attack. And we determined later that many of these people were friends of this guy's. They're like, wait, there's money, there's blood in the water, and they went berserk. And it has not really slowed down since then. We went at that point from a handful a week to within about 8 months of that, within the next 12 months, we peaked at about 100 reports a week.
Wow.
And during that time, I think we may get to this question, but by the time we started talking with you guys, I brought Matt on board, and Matt had built a team. There were total accounting of 6 of us working on that full-time, focused on the bounty program. And then as we were managing this bounty program and addressing the issues that were coming in, and there was some great stuff that these guys were finding, we started getting demand from inside the company for additional services. People saying, wait, can you look at this before we deliver it? Can you look at this infrastructure that's not in the bounty? And so this awareness of the need to do this just ramped up. And at that point, we said, we can either add more people or we can start looking for some help.
Okay, interesting. So you gave a good story there about how you got to the maturity of your program before the migration. Were there any other surprises? It sounds like the being nice and paying out of scope was an interesting surprise. What came out of it. Anything else that led to that maturity?
So, I like to attribute that mistaken benevolence to the ramp up in our program, but I don't think that was the only factor. I think at that time a lot of people were starting to run bounty programs, and it was just becoming more interesting, and we could see spikes in activity that corresponded with school vacations. Right? So I think it was going to happen either way.
Yep.
So I would say that general awareness of security and interest in pen testing really was the big thing that drove.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed that story that you've told us about how during winter breaks and summer breaks, you guys always had a huge spike of submissions, and it's good to hear. We talk about how there's a people problem in the security industry, that students are out there doing the testing and getting the security here. So that's a good story for sure.
I think one of the most surprising things for me was the groups that we found that would do pen testing together, and then you get 15 duplicate submissions, and they were all trying to piggyback on each other's research and try to get a little slice of the pie. Even though one guy found it, he'd give it to all his buddies, and then they'd all send it in, and they were trying to get their little slice as well.
Yep, and on top of that, they're trying to get their slice. They would argue with us about whether they should be paid. And they referred to each other's awards, and we would have guys that would fabricate what we had paid their friends and so on. And so that management of portions of the community became a big part of the time that we had to spend. Right? And our motivation for doing this was to make the internet a safer place. And it wasn't to argue with guys that were trying to nickel and dime us. It was trying to find problems that we needed to resolve.
Yep.
And to spend our time resolving those for the benefit of our customers and to reward the researchers that were contributing to that. And so we knew that we needed some help with getting out of the business of arguing with researchers.
Definitely. And you said at that point you had 6 staff. Do you have a sense of how much of their time was spent directly on the bounty program versus your architectural issues and cultural issues?
Right. So Matt might have a different answer than I did, but I believe at that time we had 2 guys whose full-time job was dealing with mail in our inbox and responding to researchers and following up. They were also, turning around and dealing with the water teams as well, but I think, if you had to split up, there was at least the equivalent of 2 FTEs. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yeah, that's about what was dealing with the incoming, just the direct communication with the researchers. But then there was probably another half FTE that was dealing with trying to get the information to pay these guys. Because a lot of these guys are coming from India, and just getting the payment to them turned out to be a very difficult process.
Okay. Yeah, the payments issue is definitely something we hear quite a bit in discussing with other customers in terms of why they've decided to partner with Bugcrowd. So really good to hear that you guys are echoing the same challenges that everybody else is having. So moving on to the next slide, I think we're going to hear a little bit from Matt and Dave in terms of the pros and cons of moving your program over to a third-party platform. So I guess we'll start with you, Dave.
So the reason we started looking to partner with someone was because paying the researchers was an unbelievable amount of administrative overhead. The amount of money that we spent giving to the researchers was well worth what we were getting in return. But our accounts payable team just had a horrible time with it. And my guys were spending a lot of time soliciting payment information from the researchers. Many of whom, understandably, were a little bit reticent to give it to us. We didn't have a lot of flexibility in how we were able, as a company, to pay for it. We just weren't set up to do that type of stuff. My guys were having to check the researchers against the denied parties list to make sure that we weren't paying terrorists for things. All kinds of stuff that did not lead into or didn't funnel into our mission, which is to make our products better. Mm-hmm. And so when I heard that there was, when I heard Bugcrowd would take care of the payments for us, that alone was enough for me to pitch the idea to my management. Is that we could put money into an account, pay a small management fee, and that whole problem was just off our back. Mm-hmm. Right? So that was the first thing that we considered when we looked at this. The next step that really sold it for me was the idea of having a gatekeeper. Right? While we were getting 100 reports a week, a very small number of those were actually really valid reports that we had not seen anything before, that we actually needed to do something about. Right? There was just a period where it was like every morning there was a dozen clickjacking reports mm-hmm. in our inbox. And so the prospect of having Bugcrowd triage the incoming reports, identify the duplicates, correspond with the researcher and say, hey, thanks for your input. We want to encourage you to keep working, but that's a duplicate, or that's it's out of scope. It's not. And that's the other thing is that none of the people that we dealt with appear to have ever read the bounty brief. Mm-hmm. And so they would send us things that were out of scope, and for good stuff that's out of scope, we're happy to hear that. We do want to fix those things, yep. But it's not that we don't want to hear about that, but managing, paying that out, and explaining the program, there's a lot of time in that. And that was something that we felt confident that we could contract out because it doesn't require any knowledge of our business.
Yep.
And so those two things are the reasons that we want to sit down and talk to you guys and why we decided to partner with you.
Perfect. That's good to hear. Matt, did you have anything additional you would like to add?
Yeah, I think the other thing that has helped out a lot is we actually got a lot of reports from people where they would report a vulnerability and it just wasn't real. Like they would run some scanner on some system somewhere and they didn't really understand the output. They wouldn't do any validation of anything. They would just essentially copy out each entry in the report and send it into us. The fact that we don't have to deal with that was a huge boon to us because it's really hard to tell the difference, just on face value. Is this a real report or is this just someone running a scanner and not realizing what they see? And so we don't have to go through and actually do the validation.
Yeah, that noise problem, I think is definitely a big one, Matt, that you talked about. That you guys echo it very strongly that the management offerings that Bugcrowd's bring to the table, not just the platform, is one of the main reasons why folks do sign up with us. So, yeah, absolutely. The wildlings out there dropping in things you're not expecting.
One of the other things that was very important to us all the way along was having the ability to develop a relationship with the researchers. Mm-hmm. There are certain people that we have encountered in this program that are just fantastic researchers. And whenever I see an email coming in from researcher X, I go, this one's gold. I haven't even read it yet, but pay attention, because of this. And we've been able to develop relationships with those folks, and it was very important to me that we not lose that.
Yeah.
And so the way that the platform works, where we can correspond with them, there's not a complete arm's length transaction, where we have the choice of letting you deal with the researcher, and we have a choice of jumping in when there's someone that we really want to have a connection with. That was an important factor for me in deciding who to go with, because those relationships with the research community are very, very important to us.
Mm-hmm. And not to name names, I feel like you guys have built a special relationship with one particular researcher over the past couple of years. So that's just a huge validation, absolutely, of that community and how important it is to your team.
Right. As a matter of fact, it was that researcher that brought us to Bugcrowd.
Oh, perfect.
Right. So we ended up reaching out to him and eventually having him join our team. And at that point, he's like, "Hey, man, you really need to look at Bugcrowd." So he's the one that brought us together. So that's just a case where the community, having connection with the community really helped our program.
Sounds like we owe somebody a dinner, huh? So moving on to the actual transition over to the platform. How did moving your program over to Bugcrowd and the restructuring of the bounty program itself really affect your security team overall?
I think this is a better question for Matt.
Yeah, so there was a bit of a learning curve. I mean, anytime that you change up a system that you have in place, there is a bit of a learning curve. But once you get past that initial, okay, we have to change our workflows. The guys have to get used to the new way of communicating, the new system. My team actually really took to the interface. The Jira integration was a huge thing for us. I mean, we essentially built our process, our communication channel inside of the company really is designed all around Jira. So the fact that we could bolt on your solution to our Jira system and then extend that in through our current communication channel made that portion of the transition much easier. So we didn't have to change anything from us to our internal engineering teams. We only had to learn a new system that allowed us to communicate with the researchers. And then once the team kind of got past that, really they've taken to the interface and the workflow in the system pretty well.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a good segue into the next question of our Jira integration nowadays is probably one of our main selling points to new customers coming on board, because I think they want to, as quickly as possible, get to a mature level like what you guys had by the time you rolled over. So, and you guys were definitely one of the driving forces, if not the driving force, to build Jira integration. So, outside of making sure we could snap into your workflow, can you guys give us a little bit more detail around why and how how you use that Jira integration?
So we actually perform all of our work inside of our security team inside of Jira. So when an issue comes in from Bugcrowd, there's kind of a staging ground that it goes to where we look at it and go, is this something we already knew about? Is this a duplicate that we found internally? We link it up to our project inside of Jira, and then we do our reproduction. We clone it out to whatever engineering team has to look at it. We, communicate with our engineering team through Jira, and we've got a set of automated workflows that we have that go through. And as the engineering teams update their issues that we've cloned out to them, it changes the statuses of our issues. So when they're, when they have fixed the bug, it'll pick it back to my team, and we actually will perform the validation of the fixes, either pass or fail it. And then that pushes back up into the Bugcrowd staging area. Then flags it saying, hey, we need to update Bugcrowd, telling them that this issue is this, or if we reject the issue is not real. Because there are times when you guys have some difficulties with production, it flags the issue in Jira as us needing to update the status in Tracker. Does that really answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate that. So I guess aside from Jira being a major partnership, really, and technology requirement for Barracuda, what were some of the other work-saving improvements that helped get you guys over Bugcrowd, but that you were looking for out of a partner?
Well, I can't stress enough that the actual payment of the bounty was an enormous time sink for us. And aside from being an enormous time sink for us and for accounts payable, it was a big source of frustration among our researchers, because when it takes forever to get a check for some kind of transfer of funds over to somebody, they get frustrated. They don't care whose problem it is. They don't care that we're not set up to pay PayPal in India or whatever the issue is. They're just wondering why is it you've got a bounty program and you're having trouble giving me money.
Yep.
Right. So that alone just took an enormous load off the team. The other one, we had put a lot of effort into setting up automated email replies, and so that when people contact us, it wasn't just the appearance that there was somebody home. There really was somebody home, right?
Yeah.
And that role has been taken on by Bugcrowd, of being the person that says, there's somebody here, we hear you, we value what you're saying. And, that has taken a lot of effort that my guys were expending and freed them up to work on solving the problems. And we still have a real sense that the researchers are being told what we want them to hear, which is you are valuable to us, that this relationship is valuable. The other thing that I really like in the way that Bugcrowd approaches things is this idea that Bugcrowd is sort of like a big brother to some of these researchers, right? Because it can be disappointing to run your scanner and find all kinds of zero-day vulnerabilities and send them in, and you find out that those were just false positive scanner results, and they're out of scope anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't want to discourage these guys that are getting into this business. And Bugcrowd, has a passion for the research community, and so you guys are able to provide that encouragement to these guys to get into this business and do good to help us find the issues that we need to solve on the internet. That's something that I would love to be able to do, but it's just not. It's not at the top of my list right now.
Yeah.
The top of my list is taking the things that we found and actually fixing them and solving them. So Bugcrowd has been able to continue to add that encouragement to the community that we were giving when we had less volume, and has been able to maintain that. So those are the sort of the three areas where you guys have taken load off of us that's been valuable.
Wonderful. Matt, you're a bit closer to the boots on the ground. Do you have anything else to add on that?
That really is the big thing. I mean, all of my guys, we're all security guys. None of us want to sit around and do administrative type tasks like gathering payment information or answer the question of, been 2 weeks, why haven't I got my payment yet? Or look at some scanner results to figure out, is this real or not? I mean, we want to do interesting things, and honestly, that stuff is not interesting. The fact that you guys have freed us up to do that is why we love you. Making that horrible thing that was just like, this is the medicine I have to take so I can have fun, and I don't have to take the medicine, I just get to have fun.
There you go. I like that. So moving on to the next slide, taking a quick peek at the actual program yourself. Looking at the stats here, it looks like you guys have got a pretty active program, and this is since moving on to our platform, and I think it was November of last year, so 8 months now at this point. What would you say your overall experience with the program and in terms of how efficient it is now? I guess, Matt, we'll start with you.
So, I mean, just like my previous comment, we still have a few things that get kicked back to us for reproduction. But the fact that we don't have to deal with duplicates, that we don't have to deal with the script kiddie researcher running the vulnerability scan, that we don't have to deal with the 10 guys that work together to find this one bug and then submit 10 different submissions, and we don't have to handle all of that, the noise. Just the fact that the noise is gone has drastically increased the efficiency of the program.
Dave, do you have anything else besides the noise and the duplicates being gone that?
I don't want to sound like a banging gong, but I got to tell you, just being able to log in and click I approve and know that I don't have to deal with that payment anymore, it's wonderful.
Earlier, you said you got two and a half full-time employees equivalents.
Yep.
What would you say now that you've migrated? It's fairly working on automation at this point.
I believe that it's less than 1 FTE. Matt's going to have to confirm that.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1 FTE.
Perfect. And do you feel like that one individual is putting in equal or as much effort as they were when it was the 2.5 individuals?
So we don't have a dedicated individual to it, but I'd say that if you look at the hours that we do for communication with Bugcrowd, communication with the researchers, it's about 1 full-time employee. So yeah, we probably have dropped from 2.5 to 1.
Perfect. So I guess we can probably move to questions now from the audience. So if you haven't submitted any questions, you certainly do still have time. Give me 1 second to pull them all up here. So the first one, I guess going back to the beginning of the talk, Dave, can you talk a little bit more about the infrastructure and data collection? I'm guessing that you guys were doing when it was all Barracuda.
You mean how we're managing the data?
Yeah, I'm guessing the kind of intake process and what you were doing with the submissions from there.
Right. So at the beginning, our CRM, as it were, was just Outlook. Right? We set up a distribution where an email alias, things came into Bug Bounty, and there were a number of folks on the team, and we just had a verbal agreement that I would process those. And I would do the initial reproduction. If I couldn't reproduce it, I would I'd write back to the researcher and ask for more information. But once we had established there was something real, I would create an entry in JIRA. And so that was just the initial system, right? Eventually, we realized that some of these issues needed to be patched in multiple products. Even if the patch happened in a common code base, there was a task in each product that used that to roll that patch in. And so we set up a much more elaborate system of tracking in which issues came into our project. We call it the BNSec project, to track the things that we need to do. And we track those issues for doing vulnerability validation or reproductions, and then for doing validations of the fixes. And then we would actually clone the issue out to each individual project that needed to do the job. And we would, as those things got closed, we would validate each of those things. And then once everybody had patched, we would go back to the researchers. So, for the complexity of our process really was driven by the fact that we have such a common platform for our products.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people would need nearly this complex a process, but we managed everything through email and Jira. When Matt came in, he actually set up a proper CRM using Microsoft CRM,
mm-hmm.
and had built many of the same, much of what you have in your platform.
Yep.
And we had built that in-house, and really one of the big decisions we had to make was, what do we do with that if we go to the Bugcrowd platform? And we ultimately decided that getting out of the business of paying bounties, getting somebody else to filter the incoming stream was worth doing whatever rework we needed to do to move from the platform that Matt built to the Bugcrowd platform. We still have that old platform in place, and I believe we still use it somewhat for generating metrics. Matt can confirm whether we still use that or not.
Yeah, we still use it for historical reference. Once in a while, we'll still get some researcher that fell off the planet for a while, went dark for 12 months, come back to us and be like, hey, I haven't heard from you. And we'll be like, yeah, we sent you 10 emails, you never replied. So we still kind of keep it around. We keep it around for that historical data, and we also generate some reports out of it for historical purposes.
Perfect. And I guess piggybacking off of some of what you were just saying, a question came in around what metrics are the most important to you guys?
So the main I look for.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
We look at things like the signal to noise ratio. We like to see how many issues are coming in, how many are we reproducing, how many are duplicates, how many actually kind of make it through the process. We look at we actually kind of look at the distribution, the geo distribution of our researchers, just to kind of get an idea of where reports are coming from. We also look at the signal to noise ratio in relation to the severity of the issue. We like to see, is this a high severity issue in some product being reported by multiple researchers, which kind of gives us an indication that it was an easy find and we need to do something in our process internally to make sure that doesn't happen again. So those are the metrics that I personally
I'm going to go with that.
Perfect.
Matt's running the day-to-day operations of the program right now, and I'm very happy with what he's doing.
Always nice to be on the same page. So I guess everybody's got a favorite question, and we even do something similar in our weekly town hall meetings in terms of what are the most interesting vulnerabilities that have come out of the program.
I wasn't ready for that question.
I'm gonna take this one for you, Dave. So we have honestly, we're not super interested in things like the non-persistent XSS or the self-XSS that we get tons of. I personally like to see something where we've got some obscure data path, persistent XSS or obscure data path, like DSRF or something like that. We actually had one come in where you could actually, like, if you had the special handshake under the crazy, weird fringe case where you had a specific setup that I don't think anyone in the real world actually runs, but you opened up SNMP to like the internet with standard community string on it, and then you opened up a specific OID that no one ever opens up, you could actually get a persistent XSS off in a special log that was just for watching requests of that one OID. And so those really obscure, like, how did you ever find this type of vulnerabilities, I think, are the really interesting ones for me.
Nice. A bit more of the unique and creative ones, more so than the here's a simple problem, go off and fix it.
Right. Yeah. So those real fringe case ones that would require a QA team of like 1 million people working constantly if they ever run across it. When we get those are the ones I consider gold.
Yep. Yeah, and what we found is that there's a handful of guys that will come up with findings like this, where as you read it, you just sort of marvel and think, what? I mean, I'm trying to remember.
And not always the most severe either. Sometimes it's like the context that it's in isn't that severe, but just the fact that it's this crazy, weird scenario is what makes it interesting.
Right. I remember someone once demonstrated sucking a part of the database out of an XSS in a sort field. And like, it's just amazing. And so, what's interesting that I found is that once we moved over to Bugcrowd, we were able to find these researchers that were giving us these things. They were on the Bugcrowd platform already. It was interesting to see that when we moved over there, like, oh, finally, thank God.
Yeah, it's definitely, we, as you mentioned, we have a huge relationship with the researchers, and we find that they like that central hub of everything that they're doing is right here on the platform. So, yeah, for sure. So I guess we've definitely heard the story a lot of other customers on our platform hiring researchers. I guess, would you guys ever consider doing that?
Yep, absolutely.
Easy enough.
For anyone listening on the phone, we don't have any open recs right now. But if you want to be in consideration, please feel free to reach out to us, because when the recs come up, we're always looking for people.
Sounds like the creative, unique submissions are the best resume, huh?
Yep.
So speaking of the submissions themselves, next question that came in was, did you guys see an uptick in the submissions once moving over to Bugcrowd's platform?
We did not, actually.
No. I think things have settled down in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
The feeding frenzy appears to be sort of over, and it looks like we're getting a sort of steadier stream of more quality work right now.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a virtue of just how long your program's been out there. It's very well known. The people that are doing this as a serious hobby or even full-time employment, they're very aware of you guys. So. Perfect. Next question is, do you do anything currently to maintain engagement of researchers on the platform? And what do you foresee the future of the program to be like?
Yeah, I'm not sure we're doing anything special to maintain engagement with researchers. We're basically doing the same thing that we did 3 years ago when we started, when things started spinning up, and we made a commitment to responding. And Barracuda's value proposition is that if you call us, you'll get a human. That's what we tell all of our customers.
Nice.
And so my goal was that if a researcher reached out to us, they were going to get a human. And so beyond that, we haven't really ramped that up anymore. I'll be honest, I think anybody who runs a value program, especially as the volumes tick up, you're going to get someone at the C level that's saying, what do we have to do to get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
All right? It feels like an open checkbook to the world. And so we have talked about getting out of the value program, and there's the consensus decision is that once we're in this, we're in it, and so we intend to continue running the program. I suppose at some point in the future, when we don't get any valuable research for some period of time, we might revisit that. But right now, as it is, the research community is contributing to the quality of our products, and we're looking for every way we can to improve the quality of the product that we give to our customers, and to hopefully, as a side effect, increase the safety of the internet.
Perfect. I guess last one here. What are your thoughts, and this is an ongoing conversation, I'm going to preemptively pitch our forum that our wonderful Sam Houston, community manager, manages. Ongoing ongoing conversation over there on this one. So what are your thoughts on kudos versus cash incentives?
What are my thoughts on that? So I really like kudos as a way of rewarding people who have done good research, even though they may have either failed to read the naughty brief or just chosen to ignore it. You know, there's a sort of odd balance there. If someone does some research against one of our cloud services and comes back and says, hey, you really need to fix this, I want to know that. Right? Now, we can't, because of the way we've structured this, we can't financially reward them. We've been burned for stepping outside of bounds and rewarding people for things that were out of scope. It just caused a storm of administration of people hitting us up saying, wait a minute, you paid him, why haven't you paid me? So we don't do that. But I want to be able to award somebody, somebody that's done something good. I'd like them to get something out of it. And kudos seem like a reasonable compromise to make. We, even before we came on board, had a Hall of Fame where we were giving recognition to folks for the quality of the things that they had done.
Yep.
And that's a really difficult problem to manage. People will argue with you until the cows come home about where they should be in the Hall of Fame. Right? And so having a well-defined kudos structure that is well explained to the rest of that community, so that folks who trade in reputation of that sort have something that's of value to them. I think it's a good idea. I really like it.
For me, it's a little bit different. For me, I like kudos for the aspect that if you're an up-and-coming researcher, you can kind of build a name for yourself. So as you learn the trade and you start finding better and better things, and your rankings increase, you can start getting some recognition. That's great. But if you're like a researcher with a day job and you don't need any recognition, your paycheck is sufficiently large for you, you don't need to build that up. Well, on the side, once in a while you like to go in and poke at something and find some stuff. For that person, cash is king. Like, it's a little incentive for them to go play around with something and report it back to you in a manner that is not reckless.
Absolutely. I like that you touched on the building of the reputation and building a name for yourself. That's a little self-promotion again into the Bugcrowd blog and forum area. We actually, last week I believe it was, had posted a blog explaining how individuals get invited into the private programs that we run. You guys obviously have a public program, so it does tie in well with some of the efforts that we're doing to improve researchers and get them more engaged and get them, like you said, Matt, cash is king, so get them more cash. And one of the easiest way for the new folks is build up a kudos ranking and show us what you got. So I think that's it for the questions. This has been recorded, so if you ever want to watch it again, we're posting it online under our resources section where you can find lots of other resources and other recordings. Big rally clap to the Barracuda team for joining in with this week's webinar.